The Top Floor Please podcast, where women in leadership rise together. I'm your host, Melissa McCormick, executive coach and founder of the Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. This is your space to find clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Whether you're navigating the boardroom, building your team, or stepping into new territory, you're not alone. Let's talk real challenges, real growth, and real leadership because the top floor isn't just a place, it's a mindset. Alrighty then, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Just continuing our series on influence. One of the most expensive mistakes that I see high performing women and men make on the path to the boardroom is that they misread their season. So now they assume that because they're capable, it must be time to step forward. Like that would make a lot of sense. Or because they've been patient, it must be time to push. And this may be you. I mean, this was me, but it may be you or maybe somebody that you know. But I'm here to tell you that leadership, especially at the executive level, is seasonal. Like there is a time and there is a place. And if you misdiagnosed your season, you don't just delay the advancement, you absolutely damage your credibility. And it is really hard to get that back once that it's damaged. Hey everyone, I'm Melissa McCormick and I am the host of the Top Floor podcast. If you have not heard of me or know about me, I once planned on arguing cases in the courtroom. I traded that courtroom for the boardroom, and after 32 years in corporate America, I worked my way up and through the organization to an executive level. Today, I help leaders get out of the weeds. I help leaders um, uh, quite frankly, run their business versus the business running them. I want to help them create some confidence, clear communication, build stronger teams, and quite frankly, get their time back. So I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And if you are interested in anything like that, I absolutely reach out to me and I'd love to have a conversation with you. But today I want to get diagnostic. Okay, there are two critical seasons that shape executive readiness before you're elevated or promoted. And then I'm just going to borrow some language. As you know, most of you know, I am a Christian. So today we're going to talk, I'm not going to get into a bunch of faith-based stuff, but I am going to borrow some language from scripture to put some things in that we're going to learn through the lens of scripture. This is not a devotional. This is all about leadership, but I'm using two characters or examples from the Bible. There is a season that looks like Ruth. So there's a book of the Bible called Ruth. If you haven't read it, read it. It's very good. But there's a season that looks like Ruth. And then there's a season that looks like Esther. And both of them are extremely powerful, but they require very different behavior. So if you've been following me for a bit, you know that I have a program called the Esther Project that helps women learn how to speak up, step out, and make the impact that only they can make. Yes. And I also just most recently have been leaning into Ruth and her influence and what that looks like. And so we're going to talk about the seasons of either Ruth or Esther. First, let's start with Ruth. Okay. So this is credibility building season. This is where it often feels very invisible. So if you're in a Ruth season, you're proving consistency over amount of time, right? It's kind of the slow game. You're demonstrating that emotional maturity under pressure, and you're expanding your enterprise thinking. Maybe you're not quite there yet, or you haven't even started thinking about the enterprise, meaning the business, over your day-to-day goals and objectives. You're building trust with the senior leaders. That's when you're in a Ruth season. And so it can feel a bit that you're doing an awful lot and you're making that impact, but without the title. That's really important. And so many times we feel very invisible when we're in the Ruth season. And you know that you're capable of doing more. And honestly, that isn't the question. The question is, have you built weight? In the like credibility is what I mean by that. So in a Ruth season, the assignment is all about depth. We want to build credibility. It's about becoming reliable at that level so that leaders say, she's steady. She thinks beyond her lane, like her role, right? She thinks beyond, she doesn't have blinders on. She protects the business, not just her department and not just her. Does that make sense? Yeah, then you're in that Ruth season. And here's the uncomfortableness of that is sometimes you feel like you're overlooked. And maybe you're even asking yourself that today, like, are you overlooked? Are other people getting promoted when you're doing all the work or it feels that way? Are you still being evaluated or are you being overlooked? Like what is that? Because they're absolutely not the same thing. If your execution is strong, but your enterprise thinking is still developing, you could be in a Ruth season. If your results are good, but your emotional regulation fluctuates under pressure, you may be in a Ruth season. If leaders trust your work, but not yet your judgment, you are still building depth. So here's the danger with being in the Ruth season, and that's impatience. I referenced it in the previous episode, but impatience can be the killer of your career, quite frankly. Pushing for visibility too early in the Ruth season, it can look like entitlement rather than readiness. Yeah, and you could really damage your reputation and your credibility for a very long time. It's hard, 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 hard to overcome that. Okay, I want you to move now into the Esther season. So this is visibility with precision. So the Esther season is when access increases. You're invited to high stakes conversations. You're exposed to senior decision makers. You're being watched at a different level, and the assignment shifts. Okay, then you are in the Esther season. It's no longer about proving your consistency, they know it. It's about demonstrating courage with clarity. In this season, silence becomes costly. If you need to speak up. This is why I have the Esther Project. You need to speak up. Hesitation reads as insecurity. So if you're going to hesitate, then people are reading that as, oh, well, maybe she's just a little insecure right now or whatever. But playing small, that undermines your credibility. If you're in an Esther season, you cannot play small. You must speak up, even when you've got the butterflies in your stomach. So here's my question. Are you shrinking because you don't feel ready enough? Even though the room has already expanded for you, even though you're already be invited into those meetings, have you ever been invited into a meeting and you're like, why am I here? Like, I don't even understand. What do I have to offer? Why did so and so invite me into this room? Well, obviously, they want you there because they value your opinions and they're expecting you to speak up. So if you are invited to a room, sit at the table. If you have a boardroom or a conference room where there's a big board table and there's chairs around it, along with chairs along the side of the wall, do you have a conference room like that? Many times people come in and they sit alongside the wall because they don't think they belong at the table. If you've been invited to that room, if you have an invitation on your calendar, sit at the table, even if it's the last seat available. Sit at the table. You were invited. They're expecting you to participate. Do not shrink and sit on the outside. Now, here's the executive misplay, okay, is kind of what I'm calling it. This mistake is simple, but it's very expensive. If you are operating like Esther when you're in a Ruth season, okay, so you're in the Ruth season where you're building credibility, you don't have it yet, you're building it, but you're acting as if you have it. So you're operating like Esther, but you're in a Ruth season, that's a problem. That's a very, and we'll talk, I'll give you some examples in a second. Or perhaps you're staying in a Ruth season when you're already been positioned for Esther. You already have the credibility, but you're hesitating to speak up. You know, either one of those can cause absolute problems. So overreach damages the credibility through premature visibility, and hesitation damages credibility through missed opportunity. Neither one of them moves you forward. So I'm going to give you a real world example. In my corporate career, I watched several people push aggressively for expanded titles while senior leadership was still evaluating how they handled conflict. I saw people, and in fact, I was involved with promoting people before they were ready, and didn't coach them the way that I should have. And to me, this is my fault. And what ended up happening was they would come across as being a bully. They came across as, being the B word, right? A bossy pants, and trying to throw their weight around when they didn't have weight to throw around, quite frankly. It was misaligned. And I watched these people, primarily women, but there were some men too, that were invited into strategic conversations, but they spoke cautiously and almost apologetically, because they weren't sure why they were in the room. And again, shame on me and shame on all the other senior leaders for not helping that person go, you're in this room, so I'm expecting you to speak up. Even though it may be hard, even though your voice may be shaking, even though you get red splotches on your neck, I expect you to speak up, because the more you speak up, the easier it will become. And when you hesitate, that hesitate creates doubt in everybody else's mind, from senior leadership to whoever else is in the room. And, it's obvious capability was not an issue for these people. But when you hesitate, then it puts doubt into the head of the minds of other people. And that's really, really hard to overcome. So I want you to ask, I want to make this a little bit practical here. I want you to ask yourself this. Am I being invited into enterprise level conversations, or am I still earning access? Like, do I want to be in those rooms, but I'm not being invited in? When I'm in higher level rooms, do I speak with clarity, or do I over explain to justify my presence here? Do I overstep? Do I ask questions that, quite frankly, are above my pay grade and embarrass or blindside senior leadership? Do senior leaders reference my judgment or primarily my execution? Understand what I mean by that? Like, do they reference my decision making and my judgment, or primarily the fact that I can get it done? Like, they rely on me because I can get the activity or the process or the task at hand. I can get it done, but they aren't so concerned about my thoughts on how to get it done or what we should get done. Your answers to those three questions are going to reveal what season you're in, whether you're in the Ruth season or if you're in the Esther season. It's not about your ambition. It's not about your frustration. It's not about your personal timeline. It's about your evidence. Where are you at? Because leadership timing at that executive level is not emotional. I want you to understand that it is strategic, and that's what I try to teach. You cannot force a Ruth season into an Esther moment. You cannot afford to miss an Esther moment because you are clinging to comfort. So this is why this matters. Influence is deeply connected to season. In a Ruth season, influence grows through steadiness, consistency. In an Esther season, influence grows through courage. So, I've studied, in fact, dedicated an entire lesson in my book to Esther, but I'm now digging into Ruth, and Ruth and Esther connect, and so much so that I probably will just start another book, and Ruth will be another chapter, and we'll expand more into Esther and then other women in the Bible. But both of those require discernment. In a Ruth season, influence grows through steadiness and consistency. In an Esther season, influence grows through courage, speaking up. Both of them require discernment. When do I speak up? How do I speak up? Right? If you're constantly pushing visibility in a depth season, so you're constantly pushing visibility or the Esther courage in a Ruth season, a depth season, then you can really erode trust. And that is a problem. If you're avoiding visibility in a courage season, so you're avoiding visibility in an Esther season, then you stall your momentum. Influence without a title requires you to know which muscle to build. Either you're going to build depth or you're going to build boldness. So think about which season you are in. When I coach executive women, this is often the turning point. And when I say executive women, I probably need to change that term because I'm not talking, yes, do I coach CEOs and those that are already in the boardroom? Yes, I do. But I also coach those ladies, director level and above, um, who want to be in the boardroom, or even manager and above who want to be in the boardroom. And so there's a turning point oftentimes where we stop asking what's next. We start asking, where are you right now? Okay, so instead of thinking where am I to go? What's my next stepping stone in my career? I want you to think about where are you right now? Because advancement isn't just about readiness, it's about alignment. And timing at the executive level is everything. Next week, we're going to talk about something that is closely tied to seasons. We're going to talk about strategic patience, not passive waiting, not playing small, but disciplined maturity that builds executive weight over time. All right. Awesome. All right. So I want to leave it there with you. So I don't want you to ask the question, what's next? I want you to think about where you are right now. Replay this session so that you can answer those questions to understand, are you in a Ruth season or are you in an Esther season? All right. Remember that I do work with leaders who are buried in the day to day, and you may be one of them. You may be thinking you're doing all the things, and Melissa, please help me. I love to delegate, but I can't. I don't have anybody to delegate to, or I don't know how to prioritize, or my desk is an absolute mess. I can help you do that. I can help you simplify things. I can help you get out of the weeds, start running the business instead of the business running you. If that sounds like something that you want to learn more about, go to graceandsaltleadership.com. And if this episode was helpful, please share it with another leader and be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. All right, until next time, keep leading forward.
Thanks so much for hanging out on the top floor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a little boost, share it with your friends to keep the momentum going. And hey, if you're ready to rise, find your voice, and lead with clarity and confidence, we'd love to connect with you. Reach out at graceandsaltleadership.com to learn how Grace and Salt can support your growth. Remember, you don't have to lead like everyone else, just lead like you. All right, I'll see you next time on the top floor.